I lived there for about 6 weeks. Can you imagine? I'm amazed. I'm still amazed I managed to last out that long.
Annette Barnshaw was born in London in the spring of 1935 and grew up during the Second World War. As a teenager, she was forced to flee her family home and took up a highly unusual refuge. This is her story.
How did I survive? Well, I was well stocked. I had some blankets, books, many novels. I had some bread, biscuits, and the ration book. Sweets, of course. It was almost like an Enid Blyton story.
Yeah, here it is. Just... oh yeah, it's still here.
In 1951, in suspicious circumstances, Annette's mother vanished.
So, yeah, this was my home. Well, temporarily.
This is very strange. It's just... I've been here for a long time and it just makes me feel... I'm sorry.
A widowed factory worker with a reputation for her outspoken political views, Wendy Barnshaw's sudden disappearance left her daughter effectively orphaned.
I still to this day try to comfort myself with the fact that she did what she had to do, and she remained absolutely true to her beliefs at the risk of her own and of my life. I've no idea if she was safe or well, or where she went. She abandoned me, and in a sense, in leaving me, she abandoned herself.
In 1951, in suspicious circumstances and without warning, Wendy vanished.
We lived a pretty normal life for those times, as far as I can tell. My father was an RAF pilot. His plane was shot down and he died from his injuries in hospital. I suppose I was about 6 at the time. I was really quite young when he died, but I adored him. And he was a very doting dad.
James Barnshaw was a member of RAF 151 Squadron, based in North Weald, Essex. Like many pilots, his plane was shot down during the Battle of Britain in 1940. Having no immediate family in London, Wendy was left to bring up Nettie alone.
My mother, Wendy, worked in a textile factory on an industrial estate. Well, they made all sorts of things, curtains, upholstery. She worked there for as long as I can remember. I don't think she liked it very much, but I suppose it was all she could do, given the circumstances. Well, we lived in the Baldwin House Flats, which is just north of the Euston Road, and I was at school quite nearby, and one day I got home and just let myself in. And, well, my mother's workplace wasn't that far away either, and she used to get home normally round about 6 o'clock on the dot every day. But that day, she didn't.
Like many women during the 1940s and 50s, Wendy Barnshaw was employed at a local factory. However, contrary to popular sentiment and mood, Wendy was known for her vehemently anti-establishment convictions.
One day I came home from school, which I'd been continuing to attend after that initial disappearance. I suppose I was, hoping that everything would just magically return to normality. And the flat had been ransacked. I was petrified. The place had been turned upside down. Well, I just quickly got some things together, threw them in a bag and got out as fast as I could. Well, she was extremely intelligent, quite forceful. She spoke her own mind, and for someone of that time, quite starkly political actually. She was unpatriotic. Well, of course, my father's death had accelerated that. She had been patriotic to start with, but that really affected her. She was completely unreligious. Well, she did take me to church sort of once a month, services, festivals like Christmas or Easter, but really when I come to think of it, I think that was just to save face. Mainly, she was absolutely uncompromisingly unpatriotic, and this was at a time when that was not fashionable or popular. I mean, think about it. We just won the war, everyone was waving the flag, revelling in victorious Britannia. You know, there was a lot of jingoism, and she really hated that. And she didn't encourage that in me either. I think she wasn't really liked. She was really regarded with a bit of suspicion. Not that she was rude or aggressive or challenging to anyone in the community. It's just that people were a bit suspicious.
1951 was a significant year for Britain. With much of London still in ruins, it was a time of greatly needed social and spiritual rejuvenation, and the government continued to encourage people to revel in the country's victory in the war. The Festival of Britain, opening in May 1951, was an attempt to give Britons a sense of recovery and progress, and to promote better quality design in the rebuilding of British towns and cities following the war.
Buildings aren't just boxes with 4 walls and a lid. They're as complex as the lives we lead. There are no fixed rules. They must be practical and pleasant, and nowadays, of course, they mustn't cost too much. That's all. And we tried to suggest here some of the things that can be done. The garden and terrace can be made to come right inside, or the roof to swing out above lawns. Staircases can arch apparently unsupported into the air. In an exhibition which is temporary and perhaps experimental, these devices are of course exaggerated, but they're part of a modern architect's stock in trade, and they're being applied every day to ordinary building problems, to schools and houses, shops and factories. Some of the walls here may have looked thin, but with modern materials, a thin skin can do the same job as an old thick wall, because the thickness is not guessed, but calculated.
However, not everyone shared this unbridled display of patriotism. There had been a minority of political dissenters, stemming from a core group at Cambridge University. In the early 30s, the democratic world appeared to be in difficulty. The Great Depression had caused widespread unemployment. Fascism was advancing in Germany and Italy.
Mete out to the Germans the measure, and more than the measure, they have meted out to us. We will have no truce or parley with you or the grisly gang who work your wicked will. You do your worst, and we will do our best.
To many young students at Cambridge, despite their privileged backgrounds, this was worrying and unacceptable. 4 of them, Philby, Burgess, McLean and Blunt, were approached by a recruiter from Moscow and agreed to serve the KGB. In 1951, and all working in various government bodies, they had attracted suspicion to themselves, and one by one officially defected to the Soviet Union.
Mr. Philby, you were asked to resign yourself from the Foreign Office a few months after Burgess and McLean disappeared, and Mr. Macmillan has said that you had had communist associations. Is that why you were asked to resign?
I was asked to resign from the Foreign Office because of an imprudent association with Burgess, and as a result of his disappearance. So, beyond that, I'm afraid I've got no further comment to make.